All right, hello everyone, welcome. So I am gone today for the second part of the credit card project, which is due by 3 p.m. on your block day. And so because I'm gone, I have the short video to kind of show you how to do the calculations, because assuming you did what you were supposed to do over the weekend, which was do the front page and then pick out a credit card to use, we can now move on to the calculations. So you should have a credit card picked out. I just have an example of Frankie's credit card. And let's say, for the sake of my example, I'm going to just pretend that the APR on a credit card I'm using is 21%. Okay. So now we need to talk about how to calculate the interest and how to using the chart that you're going to see on the next page to figure out how long it would take you to pay off your $999 laptop. Okay. So one thing to note about credit card companies that are going to come into play here, specifically with them, is credit card companies use a compound interest formula. Interest is compounded daily, but they assume that each month is 30 days long and that there are 12 months in the year. So they don't actually calculate to 365. They calculate days to 360 because of assuming that there's 30 months or 30 days in a month. So make sure you use years as your units. And so because we have to use years as our unit of time, we actually are going to have a slightly different looking formula. Okay. So this is our normal formula for compound interest. It works in most situations. It works for all the problems you do in class. But we are actually going to use something different up here when we get to our formula on the next page. Okay, so I would say if you are still struggling to understand some of the beginning concepts with the videos, go back and watch them. And when you're ready to move on to the calculations, come back here. Okay, so now here's another example. So because I'm not there, I'm just going to give you the payment of $60. Okay. And I am going to kind of talk through this formula. So the formula is still A equals P, which is your starting value, P, times 1 plus R over N. So your R, in my case, my 21% is now written as a decimal. And my N, again, it's not 365 days in a year. It's compounded daily, and it's 30 months in terms of credit card companies. So it's 360 days in a year in total. But you'll notice that up here, I wrote my exponent not as 360 times 12, but as 360 divided by 12. And here's why. The exponent is N times T. N, my number of compounding periods in a year, is 360. Okay? And I have to multiply that by T. However, when they're doing interest for companies, they're not just taking one big lump sum at the end of the year. What they're doing is they are actually taking it every month, but they're still compounding daily. So we have to write our T in terms of years, but 1 month is 1/12 of a year. That is why you'll see me doing 360 divided by 12, because 360 is the number of compounding periods. It's compounded daily. And 1/12 is the amount of time that has passed since they calculated the interest, but it's in years. Okay, so we need to keep our time in years, but every month they're collecting that interest, so it has to be 1/12. That is where I'm getting that 360/12 from. So your formula should look like this. A, your final amount, equals P times 1 plus your rate as a decimal over your N, which would be 360, to the power of 360 divided by 12. And you could even simplify this 360/12 to 30 when you do your calculations to make it easier. Okay, if you would like to. And so your starting cost of the laptop is $999. So now I'm going to go through this chart and how you would do each row. Okay, so let's say you have a beginning balance of $999 and you make a $60 payment on it at the beginning of the month. You now have $939 left over to pay off because you did $999 minus 60. That's pretty straightforward. So then after you have this payment left, this is what they're going to take interest on. This is your P. Okay. So in my formula, I'm going to put this column right here, whatever I get for this number, in for P. Okay. So in my calculator, if I go to my scientific calculator, I am going to do 939 times 1 plus my my rates 0.21 over 360, and then I'm going to raise it to the 360 divided by 12 power, which again is just, raise it to the power of 30, okay? And so if you use your calculator, either your actual calculator or the one on your iPad, it doesn't really matter, but if you do this, you would get that your amount left over is $955 and about 57 cents. So that is how much you have left over after you add on the interest. So you would have 955, right? Yep, $55.57. So now if I ask you, well, how much interest was paid? So to find the interest paid, you just have to take your balance, that your balance at the end of the month, and subtract what you had after your initial payment, right? So you paid off $60, that's it. And then at the end of the month, they added interest onto the $939. So if you take 955.57 and subtract 939, you will get 55.57 and subtract 939. You added on $16.57 of interest that month, okay? And now you're going to do it for the next month. So your ending balance at the end of the month was here. That's going to be your beginning balance for the next month, $955.57. You're going to make a $60 payment again. And so after that, you would be down to $895.57. Again, this is my APR. It depends on what laptop or what you chose. It has to be a real credit card, so make sure it matches. I do check to make sure the APR matches the credit card. So $895.57. Now this is the amount. Again, we are going to use, you don't have to draw all these arrows, I'm just showing you, in our formula. This is going to go in there. We've paid off $60. At the end of the month, how are we going to calculate our balance after interest? We take the same formula, right? For our beginning balance is now $895.57. So that means after we have interest, we have $911.36. And then again, how much of that was interest? Take 911.36, subtract the amount you had before the interest was applied, 895.57, and you added on $15.79 of interest that month, and then you put this here and you start all over. Again, don't feel like if you draw the arrows, it actually makes it more difficult to grade. I'm just showing you where everything is going. And that's how you calculate. And eventually you're going to get to a point where after you make a $60 payment, your value is going to be low enough to where you are going to, your value is going to be low enough to where you're going to be able to just pay it off in one payment, and you'll be left with $0 after payment, and then you won't have any interest to apply. So once you get 0 in this column right here, that's when you know you're good, okay? So it will take a bit of time to calculate it. It's more tedious than anything, but as long as you keep going and doing the process, it doesn't take very long, but just something to note. And then if you get to 15, and you still don't have your payment paid off, I'm going to raise your payment up to 70. Actually, I'm going to raise it up to 75. So you would keep subtracting 75 each time, and then you would calculate the payment from there, okay? All right. So that's your calculation. Again, these are going to be due on block day. I'm going to be back tomorrow, so if you have any questions, let me know. But other than that, that's the process you're going to go through for these steps, okay? All right, have a great day, everyone. I will see you all tomorrow.